Hey there, sleepyheads. Welcome back to another journey through the quiet corners of history, where the past unfolds gently, allowing your mind to drift and find a peaceful calm. Tonight we're embarking on a particularly poignant exploration, one that takes us into the very heart of the American Civil War, not through the grand strategies or political machinations, but through the eyes and experiences of the ordinary soldier. This is a story of resilience, hardship, and the simple, profound realities that shape daily existence in a nation torn asunder. Allow your mind to softly drift as we journey back to a time when life was raw. Survival was a daily struggle, and the comforts we take for granted were unimaginable luxuries. You stir not to the gentle chime of an alarm, but to the profound physical discomfort that has become your constant companion. The canvas tent around you, barely more than 2 pieces of fabric buttoned together, offers scant protection from the night's chill, its musty smell of damp earth and wood smoke clinging to your uniform, to your very skin. Your joints ache with a persistent throb, a familiar protest from sleeping on the hard, uneven ground. The thin wool blanket, your only barrier, feels perpetually damp, clinging to your skin like a second unwanted layer. You push yourself up, feeling the cold seep into your bones, the air outside still holding the pre-dawn dampness, promising little relief. It's a stark beginning to another day, one that often feels more like a continuation of the previous night's discomfort than a fresh start. This isn't the romanticised vision of soldiering you might have once entertained. This is the unvarnished reality, raw and unyielding. The shelter tent, or dog tent as it's often called, is a marvel of primitive engineering designed for absolute necessity over any pretense of comfort. You know its every seam, every buttonhole, the way the wind whips through the gaps, carrying with it the scent of distant fires or worse, unwashed bodies. It's typically shared, barely large enough for 2 men, meaning you're constantly aware of your comrades' presence, their breathing, their restless shifts. There's no personal space here, no quiet corner for reflection. Every movement, every sound is a shared experience. You've learned to contort your body into surprisingly compact shapes, to maximize the meager floor space, often arranging yourselves with heads at opposite ends, to allow for a little more room, a strange intimate dance of survival. Your knapsack, usually stuffed with what few possessions you still cling to, serves as your pillow. A hard, unyielding lump that offers little respite for a weary head. It's a far cry from a feather mattress or even a simple straw pallet. Yet even this meagre shelter is at times a luxury. You've known the profound vulnerability of sleeping completely in the open, the sky, your only roof, the earth, your only bed. In those moments, the biting wind or the sudden downpour feels intensely personal, a direct assault on your very being. You learn to read the sky to predict the weather with an accuracy born of desperation. A clear night, though cold, is a blessing, allowing for uninterrupted, if uncomfortable, rest. A looming storm, however, means a night spent shivering, huddled, your uniform clinging to you like a wet shroud. This constant, low-level physical vulnerability becomes a defining feature of your existence, a baseline of discomfort that rarely recedes. You're always exposed, always at the mercy of the elements, always a breath away from being soaked to the bone or chilled to the marrow. The small shelter tent, for all its flaws, represents a small victory against this pervasive vulnerability, a thin membrane between you and the relentless indifference of the natural world. Occasionally there is the rare luxury of a properly established camp. You recognize it by the orderly rows of tents, the designated latrines, the presence of actual guards on duty, rather than just exhausted sentries from your own company. It's a momentary, almost civilized sense of relief and security amidst the chaos. You might even find a cleared patch of ground for a fire, or perhaps even a crude temporary lean-to built from scavenged timber. These moments are fleeting, often occurring during periods of static operations, but they offer a brief glimpse of what life could be like, a brief reprieve from the constant improvisation and discomfort. Then, just as quickly, the order comes to move, and you're back to the road, back to the impromptu bivouacs and the damp, sodden ground that becomes a sticky quagmire after even a light rain. Your marching routes and campsites transform into clinging mud, each step a significant physical exertion, pulling at your boots, draining your already limited energy. You quickly learn that cleanliness is an unattainable ideal and comfort a forgotten memory. As dusk fully settles, the profound darkness of night in the field descends upon you a stark, suffocating blanket, broken only by faint starlight filtering through the canvas or perhaps the distant glow of a hidden campfire. You've come to know this darkness intimately, for it is not the gentle, comforting dark of a bedroom, but an environment where every rustle of leaves, every distant twig snapping, every murmur from a fellow soldier heightens your tension. True undisturbed rest becomes an elusive luxury, a distant memory from another life. Your senses, honed by constant vigilance, remain acutely aware, interpreting the symphony of night sounds, the hoot of an owl that might be a signal, the restless shifting of horses, the distant cry of a sentinel. Even when exhausted beyond measure, your mind remains on a low simmer, an internal alarm perpetually set. You might drift, but rarely do you truly sleep deeply, your body always ready to respond to react. The uncomfortable routine of arranging your bedroll within the cramped confines of your small tent is a nightly ritual. You and your comrade, in a silent, practiced choreography, unfurl your thin blankets, attempting to create some semblance of a comfortable surface. Often to maximize the minuscule space you position yourselves with your heads at opposite ends feet, almost touching a strange intimacy born of necessity. Your knapsack, still serving as your hard, unyielding pillow, offers little comfort to your aching neck, but it's all you have. You learn to make peace with the bumps and hollows of the ground beneath the chill that seems to seep through every layer and the persistent dampness that never quite leaves your wool blanket. You pull your blanket tighter, wishing for the warmth of a hearth fire or the soft give of a feather mattress, thoughts that feel impossibly distant now. With the first light, or even before the constant rumble of an empty stomach and the parched dryness of your mouth, are immediate reminders of another day of sustained hunger and thirst. The careful rationing of precious, often metallic-tasting water from your canteen becomes a daily critical ritual. You learn to take small, deliberate sips, savouring each drop, the feeling of the cool liquid momentarily alleviating the dryness that constantly plagues you. Water is more than just a necessity. It's a lifeline, a commodity more valuable than gold or currency, that often arrives late or not at all. You scrutinise every available water source, assessing its cleanliness with a practised, wary eye, knowing that bad water can be as deadly as any bullet. Then there are the rations, the monotonous and unappetizing reality of army life. Your primary sustenance, rock-hard hardtack of flour and water biscuits, so formidable it earns its nickname Toothed Dullers. It's an exercise in futility to try and eat it dry. You quickly learn that the only way to make it remotely edible is to soak it in coffee, or if you're lucky, some water, until it softens into a kind of bland, starchy paste. You find yourself breaking off pieces, testing its pliability before committing to the chewing. And then there's the salt pork, often more salt than actual meat, its grease, a heavy cloying presence. You might try to fry it over a meagre fire, hoping to render some of the fat and make it more palatable. But its taste remains relentlessly the same day in and day out. Variety is a concept that ceased to exist the moment you donned this uniform. And of course, the infamous weevils. They're a grimly accepted, almost celebrated source of protein found in your hardtack. You learn to ignore them, or even in moments of bleak humour joke about them adding extra flavour or meat. It's a testament to the desperate reality of food scarcity, and the pervasive lack of hygiene that such a thing becomes not a cause for disgust, but a minor, almost inconsequential detail. You shake your hardtack trying to dislodge the tiny creatures, but you know it's a losing battle. They're an intrinsic part of your diet, an unromantic truth that highlights the vast gulf between civilian life and the daily struggle for mere sustenance in the field. This isn't gourmet dining or even basic home cooking. It's simply fuel, a means to keep your body moving, your rifle firing, and your mind from completely succumbing to the gnawing hunger. Amidst this relentless monotony of hardtack and salt pork, there is one small dark beacon of comfort: coffee. It's a real treasure, a bitter brew that for a few precious moments makes the world feel a little less harsh. You'd trade almost anything for it. Your meagre tobacco ration, a portion of your hardtack, even a future favour just for a mug of that warm dark liquid. The ritual of its preparation is simple, but profound, grinding the beans if you're fortunate enough to have whole ones, otherwise it's pre-ground, often stale boiling water over a small smoky fire and then letting the ground settle. The smell alone is enough to stir something deep within you, a faint echo of home, of a morning routine that once felt utterly normal. This isn't the carefully crafted, nuanced coffee of your civilian life. It's often weak, sometimes gritty and perpetually bitter, but it is warm and it offers a momentary solace, a fleeting sense of normalcy in a world that has none. It's a small, weak comfort, yes, but those are the only kind you get out here, and you cling to them like a drowning man to a spar. And then every so often the impossible happens. A luxury. These aren't luxuries by any modern standard, of course. Perhaps a supply wagon actually makes it through bringing a few scrawny sides of fresh beef or a batch of freshly baked bread. You approach these moments with a mixture of suspicion and unadulterated excitement, for they are truly rare. The beef is often tough, requiring diligent chewing and a strong constitution, and the bread, while a welcome change from hardtack, is frequently dense, small, and badly cooked. Yet you celebrate these small windfalls as if they were feasts. The taste of something fresh, something that hasn't been dried, salted, or packed for weeks, is a profound relief for your palate, a fleeting reminder that there are other flavours in the world besides salt and flour. These moments, however brief, are significant breaks from the usual monotonous fare, a psychological boost as much as a nutritional one. You don't ask questions, you just eat quickly before it's gone. But more constant than the desire for food is the pervasive gnawing preoccupation with water, especially during long marches when the sun beats down relentlessly and dust coats your throat. Water is everything. You learn water discipline quickly, a hard-won lesson enforced by sergeants who know the deadly consequences of uncontrolled thirst. There are no individual stops to refill canteens. Instead, refilling is an organised, almost military operation in itself, with designated men sent to a well or stream under guard to prevent a chaotic rush that could deplete the source or compromise the column. You learn to ignore the dry ache in your throat to conserve every drop in your canteen, knowing that to drink too much too soon is to condemn yourself to hours of unbearable thirst, or worse heat, exhaustion, under the unforgiving sun. The sound of water splashing in a bucket or the sight of a clear stream becomes an almost religious experience, eliciting a visceral longing that surpasses all others. The air itself is often a sensory tapestry of military life. The pervasive smell of cooking fires mingled with the earthy scent of wood smoke often drifts through the camp, offering fleeting sensory comfort. Even when your own meal is meagre or entirely absent, the aroma is a reminder of human presence, of a shared experience. You catch whiffs of coffee brewing, of salt pork sizzling, or even occasionally the rich scent of a stew bubbling in a large pot, usually for the officers. These smells, even at a distance, evoke a faint sense of warmth and sustenance, a temporary balm for the stomach and the soul. They are part of the daily rhythm, a backdrop to the ceaseless movement and anticipation. Yet beneath these more comforting aromas, there's always the underlying ever-present reality of unwashed bodies, stale sweat, and the damp earth, a constant reminder of the physical miseries that define your existence. And those miseries often start from the ground up, beginning with your feet. You learn very quickly that your feet are your most important asset and your worst enemy. Persistent physical discomforts like damp feet socks that are never truly dry and the inevitable formation of painful blisters are a constant low-level battle against basic bodily miseries. You inspect your feet nightly, almost ritually looking for the telltale reddening the raw spots that promise misery by morning. There's no proper foot care, no preventative balms or soft cushioned socks from home. You march in rough, often ill-fitting boots, and the only solution for wet feet is to trudge on hoping they'll eventually dry out, knowing full well they likely won't. The pain of a blister raw and burning radiating through your entire leg becomes a familiar companion, another shared burden among your comrades. It emphasizes the constant insidious battle against basic bodily miseries, a perpetual dull ache that underlines every step, every movement, and every moment of rest. You realize that in this life your body is both your weapon and your greatest vulnerability, and its constant complaints are a drumbeat against the silence. Beyond your feet, the constant chafing of your rough wool uniform against your skin during endless marches is a misery often unspoken but universally felt. The coarse fabric, designed for durability rather than comfort, rubs mercilessly against your neck, your shoulders, your inner thighs, creating raw, irritated patches that never seem to heal. It's a low-grade torture contributing to the constant grinding discomfort of soldier life, a persistent irritation that wears down your resolve even more subtly than hunger or thirst. You learn to adjust to shift your pack, to walk with a slightly altered gait, all in a futile attempt to alleviate the incessant friction. But it's always there, a phantom tormentor, a dull reminder of the harsh realities of the clothing you're forced to wear. There are no soft cottons, no breathable synthetics, just coarse wool that collects sweat and dust and chafes relentlessly. And then there's the pervasive sensory assault that becomes your new normal. The heavy smell of sweat, not just your own, but that of hundreds of men crammed together unwashed day after day, week after week. It's a thick, cloying aroma that saturates the air, the tents, and your very uniform. The sting in your eyes from dust and smoke, a constant irritation that makes them water and itch, blurring your vision. The gritty taste in your mouth, a fine layer of pulverized earth and campfire ash that seems to coat everything, making even precious water feel less refreshing. These aren't just isolated occurrences. They are pervasive sensory aspects of the soldier's daily uncomfortable environment, a constant backdrop to every activity, every interaction. You grow accustomed to it to a point, but it never truly leaves you serving as a constant subtle reminder of your distance from any semblance of modern hygiene or comfort. But these physical discomforts, though constant, pale in comparison to the raw visceral experience of illness in the field. You've seen it, watched it creep through the ranks like a silent predator. Take Samuel, for example, your quiet bunk mate. His cough, which started as a minor irritation, has worsened steadily, developing into a deep, rattling sound that racks his entire body. Now he's barely coherent, lost in a fever delirium, his skin clammy and his eyes glazed. You watch him struggle, the visible physical effort required for him to simply stand or move his body racked with pneumonia. There's little you can do beyond offering sips of water, trying to keep him warm, or simply sitting vigil by his side. The helplessness is a heavy weight, a stark reminder of your own vulnerability and the rudimentary, often ineffective medical care available. You know that if it gets worse, he'll be taken to the field hospital, a place most men fear more than the battlefield itself. The thought of the field hospital sends a cold shiver down your spine, colder than any damp blanket. The graphic horror of these makeshift facilities is a constant, unspoken dread among the men. You've heard the stories, witnessed the grim procession of carts carrying the wounded, and perhaps peered cautiously into the flickering lamplight of a surgeon's tent. The images are seared into your mind, surgeons with blood-stained aprons, their faces grim, working with a terrifying efficiency by the dim light of lanterns or even campfires. The audible sounds are perhaps worse, the sickening rhythmic soaring during amputations, followed by the muffled cries or guttural moans of men whose pain cannot be entirely dulled by the meagre doses of laudanum or whiskey. And then there's the pervasive nauseating smell, a sickening cocktail of fresh blood, stale excrement, the acrid tang of gunpowder, and the cloying sweetness of ether if any could be found. It's a smell that clings to the air, to the ground, to the memory, a smell that denotes suffering and a near certain doom. This profound fear of field hospitals often leads soldiers to a terrible choice: suffer in silence, rather than risk the rudimentary cures, or perhaps even worse, being left behind if the army moves on. You've seen men with ghastly wounds try to hide them, bandaging themselves with strips of cloth, biting back screams of pain. They would rather endure the agony of a festering wound in the relative comfort and presumed safety of their company, surrounded by comrades, than face the brutal, impersonal efficiency of the surgeon's knife in a place that feels less like healing and more like a final stop. It's a personal dilemma, a horrifying calculation of risks, the chance of dying from your wound versus the chance of dying from the cure, or simply being abandoned as the tide of war sweeps past you. For many, the choice is clear: better to die among your friends with some dignity than in a tent full of strangers and the stench of death. The constant physical and mental toll of exertion accumulates day after day, march after march, battle after battle. Your muscles ache with a deep, pervasive soreness that never quite dissipates. Your throat is raw from the powder smoke that chokes the air during engagements and from the constant shouting of orders, warnings, and rallying cries. Even minor wounds, the scrapes and cuts you accumulate from the rough terrain, the branches, the endless wear and tear, become inflamed and sting, terribly exacerbated by sweat and dirt. They never have a chance to properly heal, constantly re-irritated, 100 tiny points of pain across your body. This isn't just a temporary fatigue, it's a chronic exhaustion, a deep-seated weariness that settles into your bones, affecting your every thought and action. You learn to live with it, to push past it, but there's always there, a heavy cloak draped over your very being, a constant reminder of the extreme demands placed upon your body and mind. Yet amidst this relentless discomfort, a strange kind of routine begins to set in a new rhythm to your life. The ingrained, efficient morning routines, once a bewildering array of tasks, now flow with an almost instinctive ease. The blare of the bugle call might still startle you awake, but your body responds almost automatically. You quickly dismantle your small tent, folding the canvas with practiced movements. Your blanket is rolled tight, secured with straps. Everything from your meagre rations to your spare socks is packed meticulously into your knapsack or carried on your person. This is a far cry from those initial weeks of enlistment, when every task felt overwhelming, when the simple act of preparing for the day seemed to take an eternity. Now it's a fluid process, a testament to how quickly necessity and repetition can transform a raw civilian into a functional cog in the military machine. You might not like this life, but you're undeniably efficient at living it, or at least surviving it. Your body, once soft and civilian, has been slowly, relentlessly remade by the demands of military life. You now carry nearly 40 pounds of equipment as a matter of course, a burden that once seemed insurmountable. This includes your 10-pound Springfield rifle musket, a heavy, ungainly piece of iron and wood that is both your protector and your most demanding master. Attached to your belt is the cartridge box, heavy with ammunition, and your bayonet always at the ready. Your canteen, your haversack containing your precious rations and personal effects, your wool blanket and the shared cooking tools, all contribute to the constant oppressive weight that digs into your shoulders and back. Each item is essential, each pound a necessity, and you learn to distribute the load, to shift it, to carry it not just with your muscles, but with your very will. It isn't just physical strength, it's a mental fortitude, a grim acceptance of the burden that defines your existence. You're a walking arsenal, a self-contained unit of war, and every ounce of your being is dedicated to carrying this load. The endless grueling marching that follows becomes the very rhythm of existence. Day after day you put one foot in front of the other, often covering 15 or 20 miles in a single stretch, sometimes more. It's a demanding physical labour that trains your mind to empty itself, to find a detached state from the aching body. Your thoughts might wander, drifting back to home, to a memory, to a dream, anything to escape the relentless monotony of the road. But your body continues a machine driven by instinct and discipline. The dust of the road coats your boots, your uniform, your face, making every breath a gritty experience. The sun beats down, or the rain falls, or the biting wind whips at your face, but you continue. Your feet ache, your shoulders burn, your back screams in protest, but you keep moving. This isn't just about covering ground. It's about endurance, about a test of will that stretches far beyond what you ever thought yourself capable of. You learn to conserve energy, to measure your strides, to find a rhythm that, while agonizing, is sustainable. This is where the chafing, the blisters, the gnawing hunger all truly converge. Every step amplifies the discomfort, every mile adds to the weariness. Yet you also begin to notice the small details, the changing landscape, the subtle shifts in the air, the way the light catches a distant tree. Your senses are dulled by exhaustion, yet simultaneously sharpened by necessity. You hear the creak of the wagons, the jingle of harness, the low murmur of conversations from your comrades. These sounds blend into a monotonous symphony, a soundtrack to your endless trek. There's a strange, almost meditative quality to it, a zen-like acceptance of suffering. You become acutely aware of the smallest comforts, a brief halt in the shade, a moment to lean against a tree, a shared sip of water from a comrade's canteen. These brief reprieves are treasures allowing you to gather just enough strength to continue to push through another hour, another mile. Amidst this relentless physical grind, the political division between the Union and Confederacy provides the macro framework for all your actions and loyalties. You're here because of it, fighting for it or against it. It's a grand abstract conflict that feels impossibly distant when you're simply trying to survive the next march, yet it defines your very purpose. You remember the impassioned speeches, the flags waving, the fervent beliefs that drove you and thousands like you to enlist. Now, those grand ideals often seem overshadowed by the gritty realities of hunger disease and exhaustion. Yet the deep-seated loyalties remain a burning ember beneath the ash of daily hardship. You know why you're here, even if the daily grind sometimes makes you forget the grander narrative. This war is tearing a nation apart, and you are but one small aching piece of that colossal, devastating process, marching ever onward towards an uncertain future. The youthful naivete of enlistment, that distant memory of a few years ago, now feels like a quaint, almost embarrassing fantasy. You, like so many others, saw war as a brief and glorious adventure, a heroic dash that would surely end in 90 days. You imagine parades, cheering crowds, and a swift return home, a hero's welcome awaiting you. The recruitment posters with their idealized images of brave soldiers promised glory and honor. That romantic vision, however, was quickly replaced by the grinding, unromantic reality of a 3-year commitment, a grim contract with fate. The initial enthusiasm, the starry-eyed idealism, dissipated rapidly under the relentless sun, and the biting cold replaced by a hardened pragmatism and a weary acceptance of your new, unglamorous existence. There are no trumpets blaring for your daily struggle, no accolades for simply surviving another march. The only glory you seek now is the quiet victory of waking up another morning. This rapid, forced maturation from civilian youth to seasoned soldier is evident in every man around you. You've watched new recruits fresh from their farms and towns transform. Young Davis, for instance, arrived with wide-eyed nervousness, his hands trembling as he held his rifle, his movements clumsy and uncertain. Now, months later, he moves with controlled alertness, his combat competence, a grim testament to the crucible of war. the transformation is almost brutal in its efficiency. The fear is still there, for it never truly leaves, but it is now tempered by training, by experience, by the sheer necessity of survival. You learn to load a rifle under fire, to follow orders instinctively, to anticipate the enemy's movements. There is no time for hesitation, no room for the idealism of youth. You become a soldier not by choice in some abstract sense, but by the relentless, unyielding demands of the field. The transferability of civilian skills to military life is a subtle but often critical advantage. For a farm boy like yourself, accustomed to the earth, the simple act of digging is second nature. Your experience with a shovel, once used for planting crops or clearing ditches, now translates into methodical trench building, digging shallow rifle pits and low barricades with an efficiency that surprises even yourself. You know how to read the terrain, how to find the best cover, how to make the most of limited tools and materials. Similarly, those who hunted small game in their youth find their skills invaluable for skirmishing, moving silently through the underbrush, using cover and concealment with an almost instinctual cunning. These are not skills taught in military academies, but learned in the hard school of rural life, and they are suddenly profoundly relevant, making the difference between life and death in a fleeting moment. You're still a farmer or a hunter, but now your tools are a rifle and a bayonet. Yet even with these practical skills, some transformations are purely internal, profoundly altering the very fabric of who you are. The profound emotional shock and internal transformation, experienced after a first kill for instance, turns a youth into someone with 1,000-yard stare. You've seen it in the eyes of others and you've felt it within yourself. The moment of taking a life up close and personal dissolves the abstraction of enemy into a man as real as yourself. It leaves an indelible mark, a bewildered recognition of having crossed a threshold from which there is no return. You're no longer the same person who left home. The war has etched itself onto your soul, leaving a silent, permanent scar. The innocence is gone, replaced by a grim understanding of war's moral complexities, a weight that you will carry long after the battles cease. You don't talk about it, not really, but every man who's been through it shares that unspoken understanding. Within your company, the stark reality of the foundational realities and overarching structure of military life quickly asserts itself. Your company, typically comprised of 80 to 100 men, is not just a group. It's the fundamental unit of military organisation, forming the primary social and functional group for the individual soldier. You eat together, march together, fight together, and often die together. This tight-knit unit is your immediate world, your family, your entire universe, in the vast confusing machinery of war. The faces around you become more familiar than those of your own relatives. You know their quirks, their strengths, their fears, their past lives. This immediate sense of belonging, born out of shared hardship and constant proximity, becomes a powerful force, a source of both comfort and profound grief when one of your own falls. The company is your anchor, the single constant in a sea of ceaseless change and unpredictable danger. The formal rank structure within the Union and Confederate armies, a rigid hierarchy, defines the basic chain of command from privates like you to the distant, almost mythical generals. You are a private and anonymous part of this vast and terrible machinery of war, your individual role dictated by those above. Orders cascade down from the general to the colonel to the captain to the lieutenant, and finally to your sergeant, who is your immediate superior, your direct link to the grander scheme. You learn quickly that unquestioning obedience is paramount. You march where ordered, fight when commanded, accepting a profound lack of individual autonomy in military operations. Your personal desires, your fears, your very will are subsumed by the collective needs of the unit, by the dictates of command. There's no room for debate, no space for individual initiative, not when the fate of a battle, or even the survival of your company, hangs in the balance. The initial societal perception of soldiers, as you now recall with a grimace, was one of volunteers and heroes who would serve, briefly resolve the conflict, and return home to grateful acclaim. This romanticised view, propagated by newspapers and recruitment speeches, stood in stark contrast to the eventual reality of conscription and extended brutal conflict that stripped away such notions. The war, which everyone thought would be over in months, dragged on, demanding more and more lives, more and more sacrifice. The image of the dashing volunteer gave way to the weary, often traumatised conscript. You remember the fervent patriotism that swept through your town, the parades, the speeches, the assumption that this would be a grand, albeit short adventure. Now you've become a part of the grim, unromantic reality, a testament to the war's insatiable appetite for men and its capacity to shatter illusions. The overarching political division between the Union and Confederacy provides the macro framework for all military actions and individual loyalties. This conflict, as you understand, transcends mere battles. It is a war that has often divided families and communities across the nation. You might have a cousin fighting for the other side, or a neighbour whose loyalties lie with a different banner. This deep-seated division is the reason you are here, the fundamental cause of all this suffering. It's a vast ideological chasm that swallows individual lives whole, making enemies of former friends and forcing men to kill those who in another life might have been their neighbours. You may not dwell on the grand political narratives every day, but the knowledge of this profound schism permeates every aspect of your existence, from the flags you fight under to the faces of the men you encounter in battle. The economic and social expectations placed upon soldiers and their families are another layer of unspoken burden. Back home, your family farm relies on your labour, and your absence creates a gaping hole in their daily struggle for survival. You left behind crucial hands, a strong back, and the hope of a bountiful harvest. The distant, often uncertain hope of returning home to resume civilian life and responsibilities is a powerful motivator, a flicker of light in the overwhelming darkness. You imagine the fields, the familiar rhythm of the seasons, the comforting routine of farm life. But the reality is that the war's systemic economic impact is vast, leading to widespread financial disruption across the nation. Chronic delays in soldiers' pay are a frustrating norm, adding another layer of anxiety to your existence. You worry about your family, about whether they have enough to eat, about how they are managing without you. These concerns, though distant, weigh heavily on your mind, adding to the psychological burden of war. The primary economic driver of the era agrarian life is profoundly disrupted by the war. You've seen it firsthand as you march through the countryside once. Thriving farms lie abandoned their fields, untended their fences, once carefully maintained boundaries, torn down for firewood by advancing armies. It's a stark visual testament to the macro-level disruption that touches every aspect of life. This destruction impacts not only the immediate area, but contributes to widespread civilian suffering due to lost harvests and a shattered infrastructure. The very fabric of society is unravelling, and the land itself bears the scars of conflict. You are a part of this destructive force, even as you are a victim of its consequences. The land which once promised sustenance now often offers only desolation. Amidst this economic turmoil, the constant struggle for essential military resources is a daily reality. Supply lines are frequently disrupted, leading to predictable and frustrating consequences. Low rations, weaker coffee, if you get any at all, and men having to scavenge whatever they can find or rely on informal sharing within the company to make ends meet. You learn to make do with less, to stretch every scrap, to accept that the luxuries of yesterday might be the scarcities of tomorrow. The quartermaster's promises are often empty or delayed indefinitely. You become adept at bartering, at scrounging, at making something out of nothing. The ingenuity born of desperation is a grim marvel to behold as men devise ways to cook meagre meals, mend tattered uniforms, or find shelter from the elements using whatever is at hand. The critical challenges of water resupply in the field are paramount. Water, as you've learned, is not merely a drink. It's a precious commodity guarded and rationed with utmost care. This necessity makes water discipline an absolute imperative, often enforced by sergeants with an iron will to prevent chaos thirst and the debilitating effects of heat exhaustion. You might go hours without a sip, your tongue dry and swollen, your throat aching, knowing that the nearest potable source is miles away or worse, guarded by the enemy. You yearn for a cool stream, a clear well, anything to quench the pervasive thirst that defines so much of your marching days. This constant anxiety over water is a powerful underlying current in your daily life, a stark reminder of the basic human needs that are so easily taken for granted in civilian existence. The profound contrast between the perceived value of money or the promise of pay, which was often delayed for months on end, and the immediate life-sustaining value of basic sustenance is stark. While a few dollars might buy you a brief reprieve in a town, a moment of fleeting comfort, they're meaningless when you're starving, parched, or freezing. What truly matters out here is a bite of hardtack, a sip of coffee, a dry place to sleep, or perhaps most precious of all, a letter from home. These are the real currencies of the battlefield, the items that hold true immediate value. Money in this context becomes an abstraction, a distant concept that holds little sway over the immediate visceral needs of survival. You watch men gamble away their last coins, knowing that the real gamble is simply making it through another day. Beyond the physical discomforts and economic realities, the pervasive threat of disease looms larger than any enemy army. Typhoid, dysentery, pneumonia, measles. These are the systemic killers, claiming more lives than bullets or bayonets. You hear the coughing, the groans, the desperate retching. Unsanitary camps, often teeming with thousands of men and horses, become breeding grounds for widespread epidemics. The latrines are often poorly maintained if they exist at all, and the simple act of drinking from a contaminated stream can unleash a wave of sickness through an entire company. You learn to live with a constant low-grade fear of illness, a quiet dread that shadows every meal, every drink, every moment spent in the crowded, unsanitary conditions of camp life. It's a silent war fought against an invisible enemy, and it is often more deadly than the one you face on the battlefield. The general lack of formal effective medical infrastructure or understanding of germ theory exacerbates this threat exponentially. What little medical care exists is rudimentary at best and often actively harmful. Even general hospitals, larger, more established facilities away from the immediate front, are often little better than the field facilities, lacking proper sanitation, effective medicines, or even basic hygiene. Mortality rates are astronomically high, not just from wounds, but from infections and diseases that by modern standards would be easily treated. You know that to be sent to a hospital, even a general one, is often a death sentence, a grim journey into the unknown. The doctors, though well-intentioned, are largely powerless against the invisible scourges that plague the army, their knowledge limited by the medical science of the era. The limited and often harmful array of available cures further highlights the universal vulnerability to illness. Mercury pills administered with the best of intentions often poisoned patients more than they helped. Laudanum, an opium-based tincture, was widely used as a sedative and painkiller, but its addictive nature and lack of curative properties meant it only masked symptoms, rather than addressing the root cause. You witness men slowly wasting away their bodies consumed by fever or dysentery, while doctors administer remedies that seem to do more harm than good. This desperate trust in any available cure, however crude or dangerous, reflects the profound helplessness and lack of true understanding of disease in that era. It's a testament to the immense suffering endured and the terrifying lack of effective solutions available to those who served. Beyond the internal scourges of disease and the rudimentary cures, the omnipresent environmental challenges are a relentless universal stressor. The intense summer heat baking the ground and wilting the men is a constant enemy bringing with it the threat of sunstroke and dehydration. Then there's the frigid night air, especially in winter, that seeps into your bones, making sleep a shivering torment. The damp ground, a constant companion in camp and on the march, contributes to widespread respiratory illnesses and the incessant misery of wet feet. Pervasive mud, a thick clinging menace after every rain, transforms campsites and marching routes into exhausting quagmires. And then there's the obscuring fog, which, while offering momentary relief from the sun, creates an eerie, disorienting environment, heightening tension and the fear of surprise attack. All these elements act as universal stressors, predisposing all soldiers to widespread discomfort and illness across campaigns regardless of their individual fortitude. You're not just fighting the enemy, you're fighting the very earth beneath your feet and the sky above your head. The destruction of civilian infrastructure, particularly farms and fences, by advancing armies, highlights the macro-level disruption that ripples outwards, impacting food security and public health for both soldiers and the broader population. You march through once fertile valleys, now laid waste crops, trampled homes, burned fences used for firewood, leaving fields exposed and vulnerable. This isn't just collateral damage. It's a deliberate tactic, a part of total war that aims to cripple the enemy's ability to wage conflict by destroying its resources. But it also has profound human cost, creating refugees, increasing hunger, and spreading disease among the civilian populace. You see the hollow eyes of the displaced, the desperate pleas for food, and you understand that this war is far larger than just the men in uniform. It devours everything in its path, leaving a trail of desolation that will take generations to heal. Within this foundational and often brutal context, the day-to-day realities of power, command, and conflict shape every soldier's actions and responses. The rigid military power hierarchy is not an abstract concept. It is something you live and breathe every moment of every day. Officers' orders cascade down, demanding unquestioning obedience. You are, as you've quickly learned, an anonymous part of this vast and terrible machinery of war, a cog in a much larger, more complex mechanism. Your individual will, your personal desires, your very life are secondary to the strategic objectives handed down from above. You march where ordered, fight when commanded, without question, without hesitation. This profound lack of individual autonomy is a defining feature of your existence, a constant reminder that you are no longer a free man in the same way you once were. You are bound by duty, by oath, and by the relentless, unyielding will of command. You've also observed the stark contrast in leadership. Some colonels, often political appointees, seem distant, aloof their orders, sometimes ill-conceived or driven by ambition rather than battlefield reality. Colonel Jennings, for instance, is known more for his bluster than his tactical acumen, and his decisions often lead to unnecessary hardship for his men. Then there are respected frontline leaders like your Captain Harrington, who commands with a quiet authority born of experience and a genuine concern for his men. He's the kind of officer who understands the realities of the field, who can read the terrain and the mood of his troops, making decisions that, while still demanding, feel grounded in pragmatic reality. This variety in leadership styles within the command structure highlights the human element, the fact that even within a rigid hierarchy, individual personalities and competences can have a profound impact on the lives of those they lead. You learn quickly to discern who to trust and who to simply obey with a wary heart. The daily reality of unquestioning obedience permeates every fibre of your being. You don't deliberate, you react. You march where ordered, fight when commanded, a mantra that has become ingrained, almost biological. There is no space for philosophical musings on the morality of command when a bullet is whistling past your ear or a bayonet charge is sweeping towards you. Your role is simple: execute. This profound lack of individual autonomy in military operations is both terrifying and, in a strange way, liberating. The burden of decision is not yours. The responsibility lies with those above you. Your only task is to survive, to fight, to follow. It's a form of mental discipline, a suppression of the self in favour of the collective, a necessary adaptation for functioning within the brutal, efficient mechanism of war. You become an extension of the command, your body merely an instrument for their will. The necessity of constant vigilance is drilled into you, particularly in positions like picket duty or serving in the vanguard. Out on the picket line alone or with a few comrades in the profound darkness of night, every shadow becomes a potential enemy, every distant sound a warning. Your senses are stretched to their limits, straining eyes and ears for any sign of enemy movement. This duty demands sustained alertness and strategic awareness from every soldier, a constant state of readiness that never truly allows for deep rest. You learn to interpret the environment, to distinguish between the rustle of an animal and the stealthy approach of a scout. In the vanguard, marching at the head of the column, you are the eyes and ears of the army, the first to encounter the enemy, the first to face fire. These roles are critical, dangerous, and underscore how the hierarchy imposes duties that demand not just physical endurance, but unwavering mental focus and a keen sense of observation from every man. Yet even within this rigid system, there are pragmatic accommodations from officers. You've seen it firsthand with Captain Harrington, who despite regulations allowed Samuel to march at the rear, when his cough worsened, a small gesture of human discretion within an otherwise unbending system. These moments of empathy, however rare, are cherished. They remind you that beneath the uniform and the rank there are still men who understand hardship, who remember their own humanity. Such actions, though seemingly minor, can boost morale, fostering a sense of loyalty and respect that mere orders cannot command. It's in these subtle acts of kindness, these quiet acknowledgements of shared suffering, that a true bond of leadership is forged, making the burden of unquestioning obedience a little lighter, a little more bearable. You know that Captain Harrington would not needlessly sacrifice his men, and that knowledge brings a modicum of comfort. The importance of discipline and formation in combat is paramount, a lesson reinforced with brutal clarity on the battlefield. Stay in formation. Close it up. These shouts echo across the din of battle, constant commands enforced to maintain unit cohesion and effectiveness under devastating enemy fire. To break ranks, to scatter, is to invite disaster, to become a vulnerable, isolated target. You learn to advance shoulder to shoulder, even when every instinct screams to scatter, to find cover, to flee. The collective strength of the line, the shared purpose of moving forward as one, is your only defence against the storm of lead and iron. It is a terrifying dance requiring immense courage to overcome the primal urge for self-preservation. The men around you are your shield, and you are theirs, bound together by the invisible threads of discipline and shared terror. In the chaos of battle, the methodical work of reloading your rifle becomes a practiced, desperate ballet. The Springfield rifle musket, your constant companion, demands a specific, demanding ritual, a 30-second window of extreme vulnerability. You learn to tear the paper cartridge with your teeth, the acrid taste of gunpowder briefly filling your mouth. Then pouring the black powder down the barrel, followed by the mini-ball, a conical lead projectile that seems too small for the massive responsibility it carries. The ramrod, a thin metal stick, is then plunged down the barrel, ramming the ball home with a series of quick, firm strokes. Finally, a percussion cap is placed on the nipple, a tiny copper cap containing a fulminate of mercury that will ignite the powder. This entire process, performed under the screaming fury of enemy fire, is a test of nerves, dexterity, and sheer will. Every second counts, every movement must be precise. To fumble, to drop a cap, to misplace a ramrod, these are potentially fatal errors, making you acutely aware of the fragility of your life. You become a reloading machine, your hands moving with an almost independent intelligence, disconnected from the terror that grips your heart. And then a field promotion. You, an enlisted man, find yourself unexpectedly elevated to sergeant. This isn't born of ambition, but of battlefield necessity and proven competence. The relentless attrition of war means gaps constantly open in the ranks, and those who demonstrate leadership calm under fire and an ability to inspire their comrades are quickly identified. It's a moment of mixed emotions, pride in the recognition, but also a grim understanding of the increased responsibility, the greater burden. Now you're not just an obedient soldier. You're a leader tasked with enforcing discipline, maintaining cohesion, and guiding your men through the inferno. This illustrates how merit forged in the crucible of combat could reshape individual roles within the military structure, forcing men into positions of command far sooner than they might have ever imagined in civilian life. You now carry not just your rifle, but the lives of those under your command. The sergeant's role in enforcing discipline and cohesion during marches is a constant demanding task. Keep it tight. Close it up, are your constant shouts, your voice growing hoarse from the effort. You use cajoling threats, and sometimes even a firm hand or a physical nudge to ensure the column maintains its integrity. A lagging soldier could mean a break in the line, a vulnerability exploited by bushwhackers or skirmishers. You understand that the survival of the individual is inextricably linked to the unity and discipline of the group. Unity is survival, a lesson drilled into every soldier and one you now embody. You're the shepherd and your flock is a weary, often reluctant band of men, but their lives depend on your vigilance and their cohesion depends on your will. This concept extends to the strict water discipline you must now enforce during marches. Officers prevent individual stops, understanding that a chaotic rush to a water source can not only deplete it, but also break the marching rhythm and leave the column vulnerable. Instead, designated men are organised to refill canteens, ensuring a measured, orderly resupply. As a sergeant, it falls to you to make sure no one cheats, no one drinks more than their share, no one breaks ranks for a selfish gulp. It's a thankless task, met with grumbles and resentful glances, but you know its necessity. Thirst can quickly turn men into desperate animals, and it's your job to prevent that from happening, to maintain order in the face of a primal need. You are the guardian of this precious resource, and by extension, the guardian of your company's ability to continue the fight. The understanding that to fall behind is to be left behind is a grim truth you internalize quickly. It's not a threat, it's a simple statement of fact carrying harsh, often fatal consequences. You've seen it happen, men unable to keep pace with the regiment due to illness, exhaustion, or wounds simply vanish. Days later, their bodies might be found, robbed and killed by bushwhackers, or simply vanished into the hungry landscape of war, their fate a chilling warning to all. The army cannot wait for individuals, the collective must move forward. This brutal reality underscores the critical importance of maintaining the marching rhythm, of pushing past the pain of finding that last reserves of strength. You help a struggling comrade, offering a hand, taking a share of his burden, not just out of camaraderie, but out of a shared understanding that his fate could easily be yours. There's no civilian safety net out here, no benevolent authority to catch you if you stumble. The wilderness and the war are utterly merciless. The formal processes for managing casualties, though grim, are a necessary part of the military machine. When a man falls wounded or dead, there are specific, albeit often hastily executed, protocols. The wounded are evacuated to field hospitals, a process that is often brutal in itself, jostled over rough terrain in wagons, their pain exacerbated by every bump. The personal effects of the dead are collected, a solemn task with the intention of eventually returning them to their families. A small Bible, a pressed flower, a few letters, a lock of hair. These are the only tangible remnants of a life brutally cut short. This duty, though grim, is a small gesture of respect, an attempt to bring some closure to the families who will grieve their loss. But in the heat of battle or during a rapid advance, even these grim duties can be overlooked, leaving the dead unburied, their possessions scattered, their memory fading into the mud and chaos. The strict prohibitions on fires when near enemy lines are a constant source of discomfort, a rule designed to protect the unit from observation and attack. Even at the cost of soldier comfort and hot meals, the order is absolute. No fires mean no warmth on a cold night, no hot coffee to offer a moment's solace, no way to cook your meagre rations into something more palatable. You eat cold hard tack, raw salt pork and shiver in the dark, straining your eyes and ears for any sign of the enemy. It's a harsh trade-off comfort for security, a constant reminder that your life is forfeit if you give away your position. The smell of wood smoke, so comforting in a safe camp, becomes a deadly beacon in enemy territory, and the discipline to forego it is a testament to the ever-present danger that permeates every moment of your existence on the front. The grim insurance policies forged through pacts among soldiers are a testament to the constant shadow of death that hangs over you. You and your closest comrades make unspoken or sometimes explicitly stated agreements to ensure that if one of you falls, your personal effect, your meagre pay if it ever arrives, and any last messages are sent to your families. It's an acceptance of death as imminent a stark acknowledgement that your time could come at any moment. These pacts are a strange blend of pragmatism and profound camaraderie, a way to exert some small measure of control in a world utterly devoid of it. You entrust your most precious possessions, a lock of hair from a loved one, a faded photograph, a worn letter, to your comrades knowing they would do the same for you. This shared understanding, this grim bond is one of the deepest connections forged in the crucible of war. The psychological burden of waiting for battle is often as agonizing as the fight itself. You experience a deep unsettling quiet before the storm, a period characterized by cramping guts and dry mouth, your body tensing, adrenaline beginning to course through your veins. You might try to distract yourself, check your rifle one last time, speak in hushed tones with your comrades, but the knowledge of what is to come hangs heavy in the air. Then, as the first shots ring out or the command to advance is given, a strange transformation occurs. The overwhelming fear gives way to a strange detached calm, or a narrowing of focus to the immediate tasks, load, aim, fire. Your training kicks in your body, moving almost independently, responding to the immediate demands of survival. The grand terror recedes, replaced by a focused, almost tunnel-visioned concentration on the mechanics of combat. It's a coping mechanism, a way for the mind to manage the unmanageable, to compartmentalize the horror. Then comes the intimate, visceral reality of killing in hand-to-hand combat, a moment that shatters any remaining illusions about the glory of war. When a bayonet thrust finds its mark or a clubbed rifle connects, the abstraction of enemy dissolves into the stark reality of a man as real as yourself. You see their face, their eyes, the shock of recognition, perhaps even a flicker of shared humanity just before life pours out onto the ground. It is not a heroic clash of titans. It is a brutal, desperate struggle for survival up close and personal. This moment, more than any other, fundamentally changes you, imprinting itself on your memory with a searing clarity. The distance, the anonymity of the battlefield suddenly collapses, and you are left with the undeniable, horrifying truth of what you have done, of what you have become. This is the moment when the war truly enters your soul, irrevocably altering your perception of life and death. The profound psychological aftermath of a first kill is starkly evident in men like young Davis. After his first engagement, you saw his face drawn and pale, his eyes holding a bewildered recognition of having crossed a threshold from which there is no return. He carried a 1,000-yard stare, a vacant, distant look that spoke volumes about the internal trauma he was grappling with. It's not something you talk about openly. It's an experience shared in silence, understood in the quiet, knowing glances exchanged between men who have likewise tasted that bitter fruit. This moment fundamentally alters a man, stripping away innocence and replacing it with a grim understanding of war's moral complexities, a weight that will never truly leave him. You can offer a pat on the shoulder, a shared sip of coffee, but the journey through that internal landscape is one he must undertake alone. And these indelible images don't just fade away. The recurring photographic clarity with which your mind captures the expressions of men at the moment of their death is a haunting phenomenon. A comrade's sudden gasp, an enemy's final look of surprise or terror, these visions replay in your dreams in quiet moments of reflection, sometimes for years after the war has ended. They are stark, unblinking snapshots of mortality raw and uncompromising, refusing to be forgotten. These aren't just memories. They are spectres, constant companions that remind you of the fragility of life and the brutal efficiency of death on the battlefield. You learn to live with them, to push them down during the day, but they inevitably resurface when silence descends, turning your rest into a restless torment. In an attempt to cope with these stark realities, you observe the development of moral accommodations in combat. You find, for instance, that it's easier when you can't see their faces in skirmishes, a psychological distance that makes the act of killing less personal, less visceral. When the enemy is a blur, a distant target, or merely a puff of smoke from across a field, the human element recedes, allowing you to operate with a grim, detached efficiency. It's a coping mechanism, a way for the mind to protect itself from the full weight of what is being done. This dehumanization, however subtle, is a necessary tool for survival, allowing soldiers to perform acts that would be unimaginable in civilian life. You realize that sometimes not seeing, not fully acknowledging the humanity of the other is the only way to retain a semblance of your own sanity in the madness of war. Ultimately, a survival itself is victory mentality becomes paramount. Living through another day of war despite its hardships, the hunger, the cold, the constant threat of death becomes a small triumph against the statistics of mortality. You celebrate these small victories in quiet ways, a shared cigarette, a moment of laughter with comrades, the simple fact of seeing the sunrise again. The grand objectives of the generals, the political machinations of the leaders fade into the background. Your world shrinks to the immediate, to the here and now, to the relentless, brutal pursuit of another breath, another heartbeat. You learn to appreciate the smallest reprieves, the fleeting moments of peace, because you know they are gifts snatched from the jaws of a war that constantly demands more. Each morning you wake, you've won another battle, a personal silent triumph against overwhelming odds. Amidst these grim realities, the social fabric of camp life, its unique communication, cultural practices, spiritual beliefs, and profound relationships provides both structure and solace. The prevalence of rumours circulating through the ranks before battle is a constant feature of military life. These rumours are often contradictory, wildly improbable, and met with weary skepticism. You learn to approach them with a healthy dose of cynicism, for, the first casualty of war is truth. Information is scarce, unreliable, and often deliberately manipulated, highlighting the informal and often unreliable communication channels that define your daily existence. You might hear that reinforcements are coming, or that a major offensive is planned, or that the war is about to end. You listen, you nod, but you rarely believe, for experience has taught you that the only truth is what you see with your own eyes, and even then doubt lingers. The unspoken rules of camp life are quickly internalized. There's a shared understanding of when to offer help, and when to preserve a man's dignity through silence, especially regarding illness or emotional distress. If a man is quietly weeping homesick or shell-shocked, you don't mock him, you don't even necessarily offer words of comfort. Instead, you might simply offer a cup of coffee, or sit silently nearby a presence rather than an intervention. This silent understanding, this shared acknowledgement of vulnerability creates a deep bond. You know when a comrade needs a helping hand to carry his pack, or a quiet word of encouragement, and when he needs to be left alone with his thoughts. It's a delicate etiquette born of necessity and mutual respect, a testament to the complex social dynamics that develop within the harsh confines of military life. The pragmatic necessity of well-intentioned lies told to loved ones at home becomes a regular if painful practice. Your letters back home are carefully curated, painting a picture of endurance and hope. contrasting the brutal reality of war with a curated, reassuring narrative shared to protect your families. You omit the true horrors, the constant hunger, the gnawing fear, the stench of death, the disfiguring wounds, the relentless march of disease. Instead, you focus on mundane details, on the weather, on the camaraderie, on your unwavering faith in ultimate victory. It's a delicate balancing act designed to give them peace, to shield them from the ugliness that has become your everyday. You sign off with promises of return, with words of love, knowing that these words are both true and tragically incomplete, that the truth you live could never be fully articulated to those who wait anxiously for your return. This creates a profound gulf that widens daily between the soldier's lived experience and civilian perceptions of war. You understand with a chilling clarity that the prospect of telling the real ones, not just the exciting parts, the boring parts, the horrifying parts, the parts that strip away all glory, will be a daunting challenge upon your return. How do you explain the smell of a battlefield, the constant ache in your bones, the psychological scars that never truly heal? How do you convey the dehumanizing grind, the constant fear, the casual brutality? You realize that those at home, despite their love and concern, will never truly understand what you've been through. This awareness creates an internal distance, a quiet resignation that your experiences, however profound, will forever remain uniquely yours, shared only with the men who stood beside you. To cope with this psychological burden, you learn to use focused attention on immediate practical tasks as a coping mechanism. It becomes a blessing, a way to prevent dwelling on the larger questions of life, death, and war in moments of intense stress or trauma. When the shells are screaming overhead, or after witnessing a comrade fall, you might obsessively clean your rifle, mend a torn uniform, or meticulously prepare a meagre meal. These small, tangible tasks ground you in the present, pulling your mind away from the overwhelming horrors and the existential dread. It's a form of self-preservation, a way to maintain a semblance of control when everything around you is chaos, a quiet rebellion against the overwhelming nature of the conflict. You focus on the next step, the next breath, the next immediate action, because to look beyond that is to invite madness. Yet there is also the silent acknowledgement of shared fear and survival between comrades, particularly after a near miss or a battle. A glance exchanged, a shared gasp, a hand on a shoulder. These wordless gestures create a deep bond that needs no words and transcends ordinary friendship. It is connection forged in the fires of shared terror and mutual reliance, an understanding that goes deeper than any spoken sentiment. You know without needing to say it that the man next to you felt the same heart-stopping fear, the same surge of adrenaline, the same profound relief at having survived. This bond is more potent than blood, more enduring than any oath, a quiet communion of souls who have faced death together and emerged for now alive. It is the very foundation of your existence here, the reason you keep fighting, the reason you keep pushing forward. The difficulty of expressing combat experiences in written language quickly becomes apparent. Your diary entries, when you have the energy or the ink, are brief, factual, almost clinical. They capture the movements, the battles fought, the names of the fallen, but they leave the profound emotions and horrors to the silent understanding shared by those who were there. How do you describe the roar of cannons, the screams of men, the sickening thud of a mini-ball, the pervasive stench of blood and fear in words? It feels inadequate, almost disrespectful, to attempt to capture such intensity in the neat lines of a journal. So you record the facts, the bare bones of your existence, knowing that the true story is held within your memory, within the haunted eyes of your comrades. The unspoken narrative, the unwritten truth, is far more potent than any words you could put on paper. Amidst this relentless physical and psychological toll, the role of cultural activities emerges as vital emotional outlets and bonding rituals. You might hear Thompson, the quiet scholar of your company, recite Shakespeare, his voice, cutting through the evening air, momentarily transporting you away from the grim realities of camp. Or Monroe, the melancholic one, playing mournful tunes on his harmonica, his music bringing unexpected tears to the eyes of hardened men, a shared sense of connection to home, to a world that feels impossibly distant. These are not grand performances, they're raw, heartfelt expressions, moments of shared humanity that offer a fragile respite, a brief return to a forgotten sensibility. The power of art, however humble to soothe the savage beast of war, is undeniable, offering a temporary balm for weary souls. Gambling with trivial stakes like a button, an extra coffee ration, or a piece of hardtack also serves as a way to pass time, alleviate boredom and create small diversions amidst the monotony and ever-present danger of camp life. A game of cards, a roll of the dice, a simple wager on which fly will land first. These are the small permissible vices that inject a brief spark of excitement into an otherwise drab existence. The stakes are rarely high, the winnings often insignificant, but the act itself is a ritual, a way to assert some small measure of control over fate, to engage the mind in something other than survival. It's a momentary escape, a fleeting distraction from the ever-present threat of death. A way to affirm that even in the midst of war there is still room for human play, however grim. And then there's the ritualistic cleaning of weapons before battle, performed obsessively by some as a tangible task that brings a sense of control or hope. While some men turn to prayer-fingering rosary beads or well-worn Bibles, others find their solace in the meticulous inspection and cleaning of their rifle. Every part is examined, every speck of dust removed, the barrel swabbed clean, the firing mechanism tested. It's a practical necessity, of course, ensuring immediate readiness for combat, but it's also a deeply psychological act. In a world where so much is out of your control, the precise repetitive motion of cleaning your rifle offers a small anchor of certainty, a ritual that can, for a fleeting moment, ward off the encroaching fear. It's a quiet prayer in itself, a petition for good fortune for the weapon to perform its grim duty flawlessly. The communal singing of songs like Home Sweet Home is another powerful unifying ritual. As night falls, the voices rise, carrying clearly through the crisp night air, a shared lament, a collective expression of longing. It evokes a deep sense of nostalgia, a poignant connection to the world left behind. You listen your own voice, perhaps joining the chorus, feeling the bittersweet ache of homesickness, mingling with the warmth of shared companionship. The melodies, simple yet profound, bridge the distance between the present harshness and the cherished memories of family hearth and peace. These songs are more than just entertainment. They're a form of collective therapy, a way for men to process their emotions, to find solace in the shared experience of yearning. They remind you that you're not alone in your quiet despair, that every man around you carries the same weight, the same memories, the same fragile hopes. Occasionally a package from home arrives, a true marvel of logistical perseverance. The simple yet profound act of sharing home-baked cookies from such a package is a moment of pure, unadulterated joy. It's a luxurious change from army rations, a taste of civilian life, of maternal love, of a world that still believes in sweetness. These treats serve as an affirmation of the bonds forged and strengthened in shared danger, a small, tangible reminder of the affection that still exists beyond the battlefield. You pass the cookies around each man, savouring his bite, the taste almost overwhelming in its richness after weeks of bland, monotonous fare. It's more than just food. It's a symbolic gesture, a shared communion, a reaffirmation of the deep unspoken trust and care that binds you to your comrades. In these brief moments, the war fades, and only the simple pleasure of shared sweetness remains. The enduring power of music to provide solace when words failed is exemplified by Monroe's harmonica. After a particularly brutal combat, it might be silent for days, lying forgotten in his pocket, as if even the instrument itself is stunned into silence by the horrors witnessed. But eventually it returns, a poignant counterpoint to the sounds of camp, the rustling leaves, The distant calls of sentries, the murmuring of men. Its mournful notes fill the air, a wordless expression of grief, of longing, of a quiet resilience. The music speaks when men cannot, articulating emotions too profound for language, providing a channel for shared sorrow and a gentle hope. It's a testament to the human spirit's need for expression, for beauty, even in the midst of desolation, a small flicker of light in the overwhelming darkness, proving that even shattered souls can still find a way to sing. The improvised nature of recreation, such as a makeshift baseball game, offers a brief vital escape and a momentary return to youthfulness. Using a stick as a bat, a rock for a ball, and an open field for a diamond, men who have faced death together suddenly become boys again, their laughter ringing out raw and genuine. It's a poignant reminder that despite their experiences, many soldiers were still essentially young men, capable of finding simple joys, of momentarily forgetting the horrors that surround them. These games are not just about physical activity, they're about psychological release, a temporary suspension of the grim realities of war, allowing men to reconnect with a part of themselves that civilian life had fostered and war had threatened to extinguish. For a few precious hours you're not a soldier, but simply a man playing a game lost in the simple, uncomplicated joy of competition and camaraderie. Amidst the forced camaraderie and the search for solace, spiritual frameworks and superstitions also play a significant role. You witness men turning to prayer and religious items before battle, a quiet seeking of solace or protection in the face of imminent death. Some finger rosary beads their lips moving in silent supplication, while others clutch well-worn Bibles, their eyes fixed on verses promising comfort or salvation. These are not always men of deep unwavering faith, but in the face of such overwhelming danger, any shred of hope, any appeal to a higher power is seized upon. It's a primal human response, a desperate attempt to find meaning or protection in a chaotic, indifferent world, a quiet ritual performed in the shadow of the inevitable. You respect these moments of private devotion, understanding that each man must find his own way to face the abyss, his own small talisman against the onslaught. The acceptance of crude and dangerous medical interventions such as laudanum reflects a desperate trust in any available cure amidst widespread suffering. Despite its addictive nature and its limited ability to truly heal, it's often the only relief offered, the only way to dull the excruciating pain of a wound or the relentless ache of illness. You see men become dependent on it, their eyes glazed, their movements sluggish, but the alternative is unmitigated agony. This highlights a pervasive desperation, a profound vulnerability to illness due to the era's medical limitations. There is no understanding of germ theory, no antibiotics, no modern pain relief. So you cling to whatever is offered, however crude or dangerous, hoping for a moment of respite, a brief escape from the ceaseless torment of your body. The quiet understanding among soldiers of shared nocturnal terrors and nightmares is a pervasive unspoken reality. You hear muffled cries, sudden gasps, the restless tossing and turning of men haunted by the day's horrors. There is no mockery, but rather gentle hushing from comrades, a quiet reassurance that acknowledges a collective experience of psychological trauma. You understand without needing words that the man next to you is reliving the charge, the scream, the moment of impact. You too have your own nightmares, vivid and brutal, bringing the battlefield into your restless sleep. This shared vulnerability fosters a deep empathy, a recognition that the war not only scars the body, but also wounds the mind, leaving indelible marks that resurface in the dark. It's a silent support network, a mutual understanding that you're all to some extent broken by what you have seen and done. This internal reality stands in stark contrast to the civilian perceptions of war, which often focus on battles and glory, propagated by newspapers and patriotic songs. The soldier's lived reality, however, is one of sore feet and dysentery, of monotonous marches and pervasive discomfort, of fear and boredom in equal measure. This indicates a societal narrative often at odds with the lived truth, a gap that will prove difficult, perhaps impossible to bridge upon your return. The grand narratives of heroism and sacrifice are real in a sense, but they omit the grinding, dehumanizing details of daily existence, the constant misery that defines the soldier's lot. You begin to understand that the stories you might tell the real ones will likely fall on deaf ears or be met with polite incomprehension. The war you live is not the war they imagine. Beyond the brutal realities of combat and camp life, the emotional resonance of letters from home is immense. They are more valuable than gold, serving as thin threads connecting you to the world you left behind, affirming your identity beyond being a mere soldier. You await them with as desperate yearning the arrival of a mail wagon, bringing a brief surge of hope and frantic anticipation through the ranks. When you finally receive one, your hands tremble as you break the seal, devouring every word, every detail, no matter how mundane. News of the family farm, of a sister's progress, of a local event, these are not just facts. They are lifelines, anchoring you to a past and a future that feel increasingly distant. They remind you of who you were, of who you're fighting for, and provide a vital psychological counterpoint to the dehumanizing grind of war. This connection only deepens the personal pang of homesickness, a constant ache that never truly leaves you. You reflect on the family farm, the familiar landscape of your childhood, the comforting presence of your mother, the unrequited loves left behind. There's a persistent sense that the farm in Ohio seems a lifetime away now, that the distance is not just geographical but temporal and emotional. These memories, however painful, are cherished, for they are the only link to the person you once were. You carry them like precious cargo, a secret world within your mind that offers brief, bitter-sweet escapes from the harsh realities surrounding you. The smell of freshly turned earth, the sound of a loved one's voice, the warmth of a familiar hearth. These sensations, though only imagined, are more vivid and potent than any current reality. The profound sadness of missing crucial family moments is a heavy silent burden. A child's first steps, a daughter's wedding. The quiet everyday milestones that define a family's life. These are moments forever lost to the soldier. You read about them in letters, hearing of celebrations and changes from afar, a painful observer of a life you can no longer fully participate in. This sacrifice, this profound absence, is one of the deepest wounds of war, not a physical one, but an emotional rending that leaves an enduring scar. You imagine those moments, playing them out in your mind, trying to capture the joy or sorrow, knowing you were not there and can never reclaim that lost time. It's a reminder of the price paid not just on the battlefield, but in the quiet unfolding lives of those you love. The constrained agency for women back home, highlighted by a soldier's daughter marrying her second choice, due to the soldier's absence, adds another layer of grim reality to the home front. Engagements broken, futures, altered lives reshaped by the ripple effects of war. These are the silent casualties back home. You read between the lines of letters, sensing the implied bitterness, the quiet desperation. The choice is made not out of love, but out of necessity and circumstance. The war impacts everyone, extending its tendrils into the most intimate aspects of civilian life, forcing difficult decisions and leaving behind a legacy of regret and lost opportunities. You carry this knowledge to a silent burden that underscores the far-reaching, devastating consequences of the conflict. A fragile hope for a future beyond the war is often sparked by the smallest pieces of news. Perhaps a friend mentions in a letter that a girl from the neighbouring farm, Emma, was asking about you. This seemingly insignificant detail becomes a powerful catalyst, igniting a longing for pre-war romantic possibilities, a future that might still hold normalcy, love, and a life beyond the uniform. These are the threads you cling to, the small tender shoots of possibility in a landscape of devastation. You allow yourself to imagine just for a moment a return to courtship, to simple joys, to a life where Emma's smile is not just a distant memory, but a present reality. It's a powerful psychological anchor, a reason to keep fighting a vision of peace that keeps despair at bay. You carry personal mementos like pressed violet from home carefully tucked away in your knapsack or sewn into the lining of your jacket. It's a small, delicate thing, but it functions as a talisman against the dangers of battle, a physical link to love, to innocence, to a world untouched by war. You touch it, sometimes gently drawing comfort from its fragility, from the memories it evokes. It's a silent prayer, a charm against bullets and disease, a reminder of the soft beauty that still exists beyond the grime and the horror. These small tokens are more precious than any material wealth, for they represent hope, connection, and the enduring power of human affection in the face of overwhelming destruction. They are your shield, your comfort, your quiet strength. The difficult balance of communication writing to loved ones about critical illness like Samuel's pneumonia requires honesty tempered with hope. You must inform them of the severity of the situation without causing undue despair, weaving a narrative that acknowledges the danger but always holds out the possibility of recovery. It's a painstaking process, choosing each word carefully, trying to convey truth without breaking their fragile spirits. You understand that the burden of worry on the home front is immense, and you try in your letters to alleviate it even as you grapple with your own fears. This compassionate dishonesty, this careful curation of truth is another facet of the soldier's burden, a constant negotiation between reality and the need to protect those you love from its harshest edges. Conversely, the joy and comfort of receiving news about simple domestic details from home, such as a sister losing her first tooth, is profound. These seemingly mundane events ground soldiers in reality, reminding them that life continues, that the world beyond the battlefield still turns, still cherishes its small moments of normalcy. It's a powerful antidote to the constant focus on death and destruction, a reminder of the precious ordinary beauty that awaits a possible return. These small snippets of life, seemingly trivial, are in fact vital anchors connecting you to the rhythm of civilian existence and reaffirming the value of the peaceful life you're fighting to preserve. They are gentle whispers from another world reminding you of what is truly at stake. The fierce camaraderie and brotherhood of grim insurance policies, forged among soldiers who sleep side by side and face death together, is perhaps the most profound relationship of all. You know these men better than your own family, for you have seen them at their most vulnerable, their most courageous, their most human. You make pacts about ensuring family welfare. If one of you dies, a quiet understanding born of mutual reliance and the ever-present threat of mortality. This bond is not chosen. It is forged in fire, tempered by shared suffering, and sealed with the silent promise of loyalty unto death. It transcends social status, background, or prior acquaintance. Here you're all simply soldiers, and your lives are inextricably intertwined, creating a unique and unbreakable fraternity. This powerful unspoken bond manifests in myriad ways, from grand gestures to the smallest acts of kindness. It's evident in gestures like sharing a precious piece of hardtack, knowing full well it diminishes your own meagre ration. It's in offering silent comfort to a comrade struggling with homesickness, or fear a gentle hand on a shoulder that speaks volumes more than words. It's in positioning yourself to catch a falling friend to shield him from an incoming shell, an instinctive act of self-sacrifice born of deep affection. You rely on each other for everything, for warmth, for protection, for a moment of shared laughter in the face of despair. This is the essence of military life, the glue that holds you together when everything else threatens to tear you apart. Without this mutual support, survival would be impossible, and the human spirit would surely break. The deep grief of losing comrades, especially those known since childhood, or with connection to civilian life before the war, carries an additional weight of shared history and civilian identity. When a man you grew up with, whose family you knew, whose stories were intertwined with your own past falls in battle, the loss is doubly profound. It's not just the death of a soldier, it's the severing of a link to your former life, a part of your own history extinguished. These losses are personal, piercing, and accumulate over time, leaving a landscape of memory populated by ghosts. You carry their memories, their unfulfilled dreams, their unfinished lives, a heavy, silent burden that you share with your surviving comrades. Each fallen friend is a permanent scar on your soul, a testament to the brutal cost of this war, a reminder that every man around you is a life, a story, a connection to a world that is slowly fading. The feeling of the regiment becoming a second family, with men as close as brothers, is a common sentiment. This connection, forged in the crucible of war, is unique and profound, a bond many veterans would find impossible to replicate with non-combatants after returning home. The shared experiences, the intimate knowledge of each other's fears and strengths, the mutual reliance in the face of death, these create a bond unlike any other. You have seen these men at their absolute worst and their absolute best, and they have seen you. You have shared food, shelter, pain, and brief moments of joy. This shared journey creates an understanding that transcends the ordinary, a deep, almost spiritual connection that defines a significant part of your identity. You are part of something larger than yourself, a brotherhood forged in blood, and sacrifice a family that will forever remain a part of you. The trust placed in comrades, especially regarding responsibilities, like delivering letters or ensuring care for family, demonstrates the depth of reliance within the military community. If you were to fall, you know that your friend Private Davis would make sure your last letter to Emma, the girl from the neighbouring farm, would reach her. This implicit trust, this unwavering faith in the integrity and loyalty of your fellow soldiers, is a cornerstone of your daily existence. It's a comfort, a quiet reassurance that even in death your wishes would be respected, your loved ones cared for, your memory honoured. This mutual dependence creates a powerful web of obligations and affections, weaving individual lives into a collective tapestry of shared responsibility and profound care. You're not alone even in the face of ultimate sacrifice. Even in the midst of bitter conflict, a small gesture of humanity can transcend the divisions of war. You remember finding a packet of letters on a fallen enemy soldier, their edges softened by handling addressed to a wife and children. Instead of destroying them, or worse, leaving them to the elements, your captain ordered them to be returned under a flag of truce, recognizing that some bonds like those between a soldier and his family transcend the arbitrary divisions of war. It's a moment of profound clarity, a brief glimpse of shared humanity that cuts through the hatred and the propaganda. It reminds you that the enemy too is made up of men with families, with hopes, with fears just like you. These moments, however rare, offer a fragile hope for reconciliation, a silent acknowledgement that the human spirit, even in its darkest hour, can still reach across the divide. And so you gather round a sputtering fire, the dim light casting dancing shadows on the worn faces of your squad. Despite the constant danger, the gnawing hunger, the ever-present threat of combat, you find comfort of comradeship here. You share a few words, a quiet joke, a moment of silence. You know deep in your bones that you do not walk alone. The shared understanding, the unspoken support, the simple presence of men who have endured the same horrors and cling to the same fragile hopes. This is your strength. This is your family. This is what keeps you going day after grueling day march after endless march. The fire may be small, the warmth fleeting, but the bond among you is a constant, enduring flame, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable adversity. The very act of combat quickly reveals the immediate and brutal consequences, a relentless, terrible arithmetic of battle, where individual lives are rapidly absorbed into the collective effort. You witness men falling, collapsing to the ground in horrifying sudden ways, and the line with grim necessity closes around their gaps. There's no time for grief, no pause for mourning. The relentless forward momentum of the charge, or the desperate holding of a position, demands an immediate adjustment. A comrade who was just a breath away is now a still form on the ground, and your mind, trained by sheer survival, registers the loss only as a space that must be filled. The unit must maintain its cohesion, its fighting strength even as its individual components are shattered. This brutal efficiency is a horrifying testament to the dehumanizing logic of war, where the individual, however loved, however vital, is ultimately expendable in the face of the larger military objective. This harsh reality is never more apparent than during strategic, often desperate frontal assaults against formidable entrenched positions. You learn that such actions, like the charges against a well-defended ridge, are always deemed costly, very costly, even if deemed necessary for military objectives. The ground you traverse becomes a killing field, crisscrossed by defensive works, abattis and hidden sharpshooters. You understand with a chilling clarity the near-suicidal nature of these orders, yet you push forward. The courage required isn't a grand heroic sweep, but a grim internal resolve to keep moving, to keep firing, to keep step with the men beside you, even as the air fills with lead and the ground beneath your feet becomes slick with blood. The tactical necessity of these assaults outweighs the immense human cost in the cold calculations of command, and you are merely the instrument of that terrible arithmetic, hoping to be one of the few who make it to the other side. The devastating impact of artillery barrages adds another layer of terror to the battlefield. The screaming shells, the earth-shattering explosions, the blinding flashes of light, these create chaos and gaping holes in your line, not just through physical casualties, but through sheer psychological shock. You hear the distinct whine of an incoming shell, a sound that strikes primal fear into your very core, and then the deafening roar as it explodes, showering you with dirt shrapnel and the dismembered remains of your comrades. Men waver under the combined pressure of fire and psychological shock, their nerves frayed, their resolve tested to its breaking point. It's a relentless, indiscriminate form of warfare designed to break the enemy's will as much as its ranks. You learn to brace yourself, to anticipate the impact, to flatten yourself against the earth, hoping to escape the deadly rain of iron, knowing that the next shell could have your name on it. Then comes the chaos and extreme danger of retreat. It's an order you dread for turning your back on the enemy if not executed with extreme discipline, and covering fire can invite disaster. A disorganized retreat quickly devolves into a rout with men scattering, becoming easy prey for a pursuing enemy. The shouts of fall back or retreat are often swallowed by the din of battle, adding to the confusion. You learn to move backward while facing forward to keep your rifle loaded to fire defensively, to maintain some semblance of order in the swirling maelstrom. It's a terrifying, vulnerable dance requiring a different kind of courage than an advance the courage to disengage without breaking, to save yourself and your comrades for another fight. The instinct is to flee, but the training demands a controlled disciplined withdrawal, and the consequences of failure are often complete annihilation. The high casualty rates within companies are a grim, undeniable testament to the relentless attrition of war. You remember Company K, your company, starting with a robust 100 men when you first mustered. But disease, the silent killer, quickly began to take its toll, reducing your numbers to a weary 80 before you ever saw major combat. Then came a major assault, a brutal engagement that cost your company dearly, leaving only 47 men standing. It's a stark, horrifying arithmetic, a constant drain on manpower and morale. You watch your numbers dwindle, the familiar faces disappearing, replaced by new, often greener recruits who themselves are quickly consumed by the relentless maw of the conflict. Each loss is a gut punch, a tear in the fabric of your shared brotherhood, a reminder of the ever-present likelihood of your own demise. You become accustomed to the grim calculations, to the dwindling numbers, to the reality that every battle, every skirmish will demand its share of lives. After the fury of combat subsides, there comes the grim task of battlefield aftermath. You move through this devastated landscape, a horrifying tableau of fallen men separating the living from the dead, providing immediate aid to the wounded. The groans of the injured, the desperate pleas for water, the haunting silence of the dead. These sounds and sights are burned into your memory. You witness the dead in postures that would be impossible for the living, twisted into grotesque shapes by the violence of their end, their eyes often wide open, staring blankly at the indifferent sky. The stench of blood, gunpowder, and human waste hangs heavy in the air, a sickening perfume that will forever be associated with the aftermath of battle. It's a duty that taxes both body and soul, forcing you to confront the raw, unvarnished reality of death on a scale you could never have imagined to touch and move the lifeless forms of those who were moments ago full of breath and purpose. Adding to this grim tableau are the unburied or hastily buried dead, sometimes with unmarked graves, indicating the overwhelming scale of casualties and the profound limitations of military logistics. In the rush of battle or during a rapid advance or retreat, there simply isn't time or manpower to properly inter every fallen soldier. Bodies are sometimes left where they lay, or quickly covered with a shallow layer of earth marked only by a crude wooden cross or nothing at all. You march past these silent reminders of past engagements, the sight of a half-buried boot or a skeletal hand protruding from the ground, a chilling testament to the sheer volume of lives lost, and the inability to afford proper respect to each fallen warrior. It's a stark, dehumanizing aspect of war, a constant reminder that individual lives in the grand scheme of things become mere statistics, their final resting places often forgotten, swallowed by the hungry earth. This pervasive reality contributes to the grim truth that many soldiers, especially those struggling with illness, harbour a profound fear of being left behind at field hospitals. Despite their intended purpose, these places are viewed more as way stations to death than recovery, leading to stubborn refusals to seek aid. You've seen men hide their wounds, deny their fevers, and resist being carried away, knowing that once you enter that tent your fate is largely sealed. The doctors, for all their efforts, are often overwhelmed, under-equipped, and working with a limited understanding of medicine. To be left at a field hospital is to be separated from your company, from your brotherhood, from the only family you have in this war, and to face your end among strangers in a place synonymous with suffering. It's a personal decision fraught with terror, a desperate clinging to the slim hope of dying with your comrades rather than alone in a place of torment. This fear of abandonment extends beyond the hospital. The harsh consequence of being left behind during a march is a stark, ever-present threat. You know that if you falter, if you cannot keep pace with the column, you might be found days later, robbed and killed by bushwhackers or simply vanished into the hungry landscape of war. There's no rescue party, no search effort. The army must move on its vast machinery indifferent to the fate of a single struggling man. This reality instills a desperate drive to push through exhaustion, through pain, through illness, knowing that to fall behind is to risk a lonely, brutal end. The wilderness itself becomes an enemy, a vast indifferent maw ready to swallow the weak and the isolated. You cling to your comrades, to the formation, to the collective, knowing that your individual survival is entirely dependent on your ability to keep up, to remain a part of the moving whole. The faded romantic notions of war that once filled your head have quickly dissipated, replaced by a grinding test of endurance where survival itself is victory. The bugles, the banners, the patriotic fervour that drew you to enlist, these memories now feel distant, almost alien. The reality is mud hunger disease and the constant dull ache in your bones. There's no glory in dysentery, no honour in blistered feet. The naive, heroic ideal of combat has been stripped away, leaving behind an unvarnished truth. This war is a testament to human suffering, and merely making it through another day is the only triumph that truly matters. You've traded the grand narratives for the small immediate victories of staying alive, of breathing another breath, of seeing another sunrise. The romantic ideals are a luxury you can no longer afford. Pragmatism and the will to endure are your new gods. Your journey from citizen to soldier is a transformation that for the fortunate will eventually lead back to citizen again. but you understand with a chilling clarity that this is a profound, often irreversible personal change. The man who left home is gone, replaced by someone hardened by unimaginable experiences, scarred by memories that will never truly fade. The world you left behind will be different, but more importantly, you will be different. The war has etched itself onto your very soul, altering your perceptions, your values, your capacity for joy and sorrow. The transition back to civilian life will be another battle in itself, a struggle to reconcile the person you were with the person you've become, to find a place for your wartime experiences in a world that cannot possibly comprehend them. The innocence is lost forever, replaced by a wisdom born of fire and blood, a burden that you will carry until your last day. This leads to the profound dilemma of re-enlistment, a question that looms large as your initial term of service draws to a close. The pull of home, family, farm, a future that makes sense, is immense, a powerful siren song promising peace and normalcy. You dream of the quiet rhythms of civilian life, of familiar faces of a world where your daily existence isn't defined by the constant threat of death. But then there's the unique brotherhood, forged in war, the unbreakable bond with your comrades, a connection that feels deeper and more profound than any other you have known. And there's the nagging feeling of leaving a job half done, of abandoning your friends, of deserting the cause. It's a difficult internal struggle, a weighty decision between the known comforts of a past life and the intense, irreplaceable camaraderie of your present. The war has changed you, and choosing to leave it or to stay feels like choosing between two irrevocably altered versions of yourself. The quiet understanding and resilience of a squad gathered around a fire finding comfort of comradeship, despite constant danger, is perhaps the most enduring image of your time in the war. The flames flicker, casting dancing shadows on faces lined with fatigue and etched with the unspoken stories of battle. You share a few words, a shared silence, a warmth that comes not just from the fire, but from the proximity of men who truly understand. In these moments, you know deep in your bones that you do not walk alone. The knowledge that you are surrounded by men who have faced the same horrors, who share the same fears, and who cling to the same fragile hopes, is a powerful antidote to despair. This bond, forged in the crucible of suffering, is your truest shield, your most enduring comfort. It's a testament to the human capacity for connection, for resilience, even in the most desolate of circumstances. You carry the weight of these experiences not just in your memories, but in the subtle shifts of your demeanour, the quiet intensity in your eyes, the way you view the world. The war has seeped into every fibre of your being, transforming you irrevocably. When the final shot is fired and the time for peace eventually comes, you will carry these truths with you, a living testament to an era of profound national division and unimaginable personal sacrifice. The quiet courage of the ordinary man enduring relentless hardship and the constant shadow of death will be your legacy. And as the echoes of the cannon fade and the world outside slowly begins to rebuild, you will look back not on a glorious adventure, but on a grinding, brutal test of the human spirit, a test that you, against all odds, managed to survive. And now, as the last embers of those distant campfires fade and the echoes of the bugle calls grow soft, allow your mind to gently drift back away from the mud and the hardship, away from the rattle of muskets and the cries of weary men. You can feel the warmth of your own bed, the softness of your blankets, a comfort unimaginable to the soldier we've followed tonight. Let the images of their struggle, their quiet resilience, serve not as a disturbance, but as a gentle reminder of the enduring strength of the human spirit, a strength that allowed them to find camaraderie amidst chaos and hope, in the shadow of despair. Contrast their meagre rations with the abundance of your own pantry, their rough wool uniforms with the softness of your clothes, their open bivouacs with the secure walls of your home. These are the quiet blessings of your present, born in part from the sacrifices of those who endured so much in a time long past. As the world outside quiets and the concerns of your own day recede, let the vastness of history cradle your thoughts, transforming the turmoil of the past into a peaceful backdrop for your rest. There is no need for vigilance now, no need for the weary march. You are safe, you are warm, and you are here, and you are. So breathe deeply, let your muscles relax, and allow the gentle current of sleep to carry you away. May your dreams be filled with peace, and may the quiet lessons of history provide a comforting rhythm for your night.